So good evening again for those of you who are now joining. My name is Shaquana Baba and I'll be your moderator for tonight's session. So tonight's session is on the basics of agri-tourism, and our presenter for this afternoon is Miss Shanna Brandon. Miss Shanna Brandon is a development specialist dedicated to the community development, economic transformation, and social upliftment. Ms. Brandon has worked at IKEA for the past 18 years, which has spanned work in capacity building of farmers and rural community organizations. Also in rural tourism development and supporting women in agriculture, promoting youth involvement in agriculture, project management, building food safety capacities, and promoting green business opportunities, through the bioeconomy. Ms. Brandon was previously the co-chair of AICA Caribbean Agri-Tourism Network and has worked with the community group in Jamaica to promote and strengthening rural tourism initiatives. In 2023, Ms. Brandon coordinated the delivery of rural tourism online courses for the Caribbean, which was completed by over 300 individuals from across the region. Ms. Brandon has also taught this course to the university master level students at the University of Technology in Jamaica. Ms. Brandon holds a BSc in Economics and a Master's in Economics and Management of Rural Development. Ms. Brandon has also participated in training courses on rural tourism delivered in Mexico and Argentina. Without further ado, I will now hand it over to you, Ms. Brandon. But just a little side note as well. The poll will be launched in our Q&A segment, so please look out for it and do cast your votes. Thank you so much, Ms. Brandon, and I will now pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am going to try and share my screen so you can see my presentation. So just give me a second, please. Okay, please let me know if you're seeing the presentation, the PowerPoint in presentation mode.
Yes, I'm confirming that I can see. Thank you.
And it is in presentation mode?
Yes, it is.
Great, 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 great. Okay, all right. Well, thank you again for having me, Helen's daughters, and for all of those who have logged on to today's session. Based on, I saw 100 participants, so I mean, that's really good to see that so many persons have logged on to this session. I might need a little bit of information as to which countries are participating in today's session.
That is no problem. We have persons from St. Vincent, St. Kitts, and St. Lucia.
St. Vincent, St. Kitts, and St. Lucia. Okay,
yes,
thank you so much. All right, just give me 1 second. I'm actually going to get a pen so I can write down that information. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry for that break. All right, so I am today doing today's session, as you would probably have heard of before, is providing an introduction to agri-tourism. And so we will be going through, this is a presentation outline. What is agri-tourism? Potential benefits of agri-tourism linkages, looking at improving the supply of local agricultural products to the tourism sector as one of the ways we can strengthen agri-tourism linkages, bringing tourism to the rural areas and farming locations as another way of strengthening linkages between tourism and agriculture, trends towards alternatives to traditional tourism, how we can use your farm or rural community as a tourism destination, tips on developing and executing your idea, and 1 or 2 agritourism examples. I'm not sure how the sessions have been going over the past few weeks. If persons would like to ask questions during the session, or if that is left for after the session, you can just clarify.
Well, normally they will also use the Q&A box that is attached to the Zoom to write their question in, and then I will repeat them at the end of this session or what time is convenient for you. They could also use the chat box, or they could also raise their hands and I could give them permit to speak.
Okay, but so you will give me a heads up because I may not see it because I'm sharing screen. I
I
might
don't
not
know
be
if you
able.
want, I don't know if you want to wait till after, but if there's a window and you want to take some question, I'll
I
be,
can indicate. Okay, I
yeah.
think that's a good point. So I
Okay.
can stop ever so often to see if there are any questions.
Yes, and I will be able to assist from there. So that's no problem.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so what do we mean by agritourism? So agritourism can be seen as the promotion, basically the promotion of increased linkages between two sectors that a lot of our countries are heavily involved in, that is agriculture and tourism. Agriculture, I think, for many of the persons in this course may be their core business because I know this is an ag-cademy, right? And I love that terminology. However, even this is agriculture related, tourism, we have to recognize that tourism is the dominant industry in the Caribbean. And the tourism sector therefore provides significant market opportunities for the agricultural sector and rural communities. And it can comprise the supply of local products to the tourism sector and or, as I had mentioned in the outline, taking tourism into rural areas. Another way that we can see agritourism is as a means of value addition. The further you take your product from the farm, the more you add value to that product, right? So agritourism is a part of adding value to farming. The closer tourism gets to the rural community, the more it adds value to the local economy. And so we have to look at agritourism as a means of creating pathways and intensifying linkages between agritourism and agriculture and tourism that can result in significant spin-offs via the increased supply of farm output and new market channels and increased employment, particularly in the rural community. And so how can we view the connection between these two sectors as creating more value for the agricultural sector and, in a sense, for the tourism sector as well? So, what's the big thing about tourism, right? Worldwide, it contributes 10% to worldwide GDP, that's gross domestic product. Essentially, it contributes 10% to the economies of the world, right? It generates 1 in 10 jobs across the world, and it accounts for 70% of exports globally. And this was according to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, the acronym UNWTO, okay? Just to note that the presentation will be shared with Helen's daughter so that they can share it similarly with the participants, so that you can access all of these links and references for additional information. And this is a quote from the UNWTO. Today, the business volume of tourism equals or even surpasses that of oil exports, food products, or automobiles. So you begin to see the quantum of potential business opportunity when you talk about tourism. And I'm sure in all of your countries, right, you're talking about St. Vincent, St. Kitts and Nevis, and for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia, tourism is a major part of the economies, I'm sure, in all 3 countries. And then specifically in the Caribbean, we are particularly tourism dependent. Several countries' tourism earnings account for over 60% of GDP. And there's a graph here on the screen that shows you the tourism dependency index. This was done in 2018, I know a couple of years back. But if you look towards the left-hand side of the graph, which has the higher bars, the blue bars, most of them are Caribbean countries, right? Well, no, let's correct that. All of them are Caribbean countries. You can see there, number 6 is St. Lucia, number 15 is St. Vincent and the Grenadines, followed by number 16, St. Kitts and Nevis, right? Where I'm from, Jamaica 17, right behind St. Kitts and Nevis, to show you the extent to which our economies, our countries are heavily tourism dependent. And unfortunately, despite being so heavily tourism dependent, there is what we refer to as revenue leakages as much as up to 70% in some countries. And when I say revenue leakage, which means for every tourism dollar that is earned in some countries, this may not be the case in all countries, but in some countries, as much as 70 cents out of that dollar leaves the country, right? In terms of, so that the revenue benefit to countries are somewhere between 30, as low as 30%, maybe going up towards 40, 50, 60% if your country is one of the more fortunate ones and can retain a large portion of that tourism revenue. On the other side, we're talking about tourism. Let's look at what has happened to agriculture in recent years. Unfortunately, agricultural development in the Caribbean has not kept pace with tourism. The sector has been negatively affected by several external shocks, hurricanes, reduced commodity prices. Some of the major commodities that our economies have depended upon, such as bananas, sugar, are significantly less viable as they once were, partially sometimes due to international competition, dependence on a few main export crops, and some of which has gone into decline, limited access to financial resources to scale and modernize production, fragmented agricultural stakeholders, because we have a lot of small scale producers in our countries who sometimes are not sufficiently organized and therefore are fragmented and they can't organize and lobby in the way that they should. And of course, we have, concomitant with all of that, increased food imports into our countries. And so one of the things that we are thinking that we need to look at how we can link the two sectors to help to boost the agriculture sector beyond some of the hurdles that we have just mentioned, right? So increased linkages between agriculture and tourism can result in the expansion of the sale of agricultural commodities. There's a greater market to which you can sell your agricultural produce. You can help to diversify your farm income. This is an example of a coffee farmer who decided to start doing tours to his farm. And so he started in a rudimentary fashion and, had people start coming to his farm. And in that way, he is diversifying his farm income. So in addition to selling coffee, he can also gain revenue from visitors coming to do tours on his farm. He can create jobs, particularly for young people and for women, for example, in tour guiding and so forth. It allows opportunities to add value to your local produce. You can create different types of products from the raw produce that can be attractive to the tourism market. This agritourism linkages helps to promote community collaboration and partnership because it does take, considered community effort, to be able to engage with the tourism sector and so forth. Another thing is that it allows you to revalue your rural way of life. A lot of persons in rural areas take for granted what you have, the clean air, the lush flora, but then a visiting person, someone from outside, a tourist will come and say, wow, this is fabulous. I don't have this where I live, and so it helps you to see your your rural environment in a different light. It revalues what you have right at your doorstep. And as such, builds your local pride. And beyond the rural community and the farm, you know, for the tourist sector, it strengthens the tourist offer. It takes the tourism offer beyond just the beach and the sand and the sea and gives more depth to your tourism product. So, these are all the benefits that can accrue from strengthening your linkages between agriculture and tourism. And so it can also lead to increased local supply to the tourism market, right? I mean, and we know that there are some challenges that need to be overcome when it relates to supplying to the tourism market from the agricultural sector. And as such, some of the things that we need to take into consideration or take on board is, the need for increased dialogue between people in the agricultural sector and people in the tourism sector, to communicate with hotels to find out about what they need, what are the specifications of the products that they need, to communicate to them so that they understand the seasonality of the particular product, so that, there can be better, people can essentially sit on the same page as to when things are available and help to schedule planting, sensitize chefs, reserving local food in the hotels, and matching their menus with seasonality, and because, we have over time, we have heard of the complaints from the tourism sector with respect to inadequate quality and consistency of supply coming from the agricultural sector. There's concern about insufficient post-harvest knowledge and skills. There's issues about supply chain logistics for distributors of agricultural commodities to the hotel sector. Sometimes, even if it is, for some reason, procuring goods from your own country can be more challenging than just bringing in a container from overseas. We have to find a way to make it easier to buy local. And we have to incentivize local hotels, chefs to source local, and so those are some of the conversations that need to start happening. On the farm, how do we plant according to market need? There's need to implement agronomic practices that enhance post-harvest quality so that the best quality produce is going into the hotel sector. There's also the issue of food safety practices. You're dealing with sometimes hotels that are internationally owned, and as such, they adhere to international food safety guidelines. And how do you ensure that these practices are taken on board by the local farming sector? There's the issue of traceability, which tends to be a weak point in most countries, which is related to food safety, and the need to possibly also experiment with new crops and new growing systems based on the demands of the hotel sector. As I had mentioned about post-harvest challenges, the need to ensure that we have better knowledge and abilities when it relates to harvesting to reduce spoilage. How do you aggregate small farmer output to be able to supply en masse to the hotel sector, as well as the issue of storage infrastructure and transportation to be able to distribute to the hotel. So all of those things need to be addressed to ensure that agriculture puts its best foot forward and is able to meet the requirements of the hotel sector. Supply logistics related to post-harvest, the distribution mechanisms, the transportation systems, understanding the hotel receival process and the feedback to understand whether or not the hotels were satisfied with the supply, if there's any improvements that are needed, right? And it's, one of the things that over time I've also noticed, and it's something that we have to figure out how to address, that oftentimes the two sectors, that's agriculture and tourism, don't necessarily speak the same language. For example, the tourism expects year-round access to food items, where several agricultural sectors are seasonal. Some hotels are forward-thinking and are willing to base their menus. They may change their menus according to seasonality. So they may have different menus at different types of the years. But hotels have gotten larger. They're increasingly being owned by international chains that use international supply systems. And it is sometimes difficult for, the small farmer, local farmers to break into those procurement systems, right? But if there was greater dialogue between the two sectors, then, over time, they can start to speak the same language or close to the same language. But that has to be a very important consideration when you think about how you link both sectors, how you can get, two sectors that kind of speak different languages start conversing in the same tone. I don't mind breaking here just in case there are any questions or comments, particularly on the issue of supplying to the tourism market. And if anyone in any of the participants are farming or even not farming, but have had any experience supplying to the hotel sector. Does anyone want to comment here or? I'll wait 1 or 2 seconds.
Hi, I see Melissa hand is up, so I'm going to unmute her to give her permission to speak. Okay? You could go ahead, Melissa.
All right. Hello, good night. Everyone hearing me?
We can hear you.
All right. So I have not much inside the in the hotel industry. However, I'm presently going to plot out a spot to try and attempt to do edible flowers. And I don't know how it is going to actually spill off, because this is my very first time doing it. So I think the very first presenter, when the beginning of this process, he had some experience. So I will have to piggyback on him and see how, because a lot of persons, nobody in St. Vincent I know of does edible flowers in Tortola. It's a big thing because there's a tourism sector. We do have tourism here. It's just that it's not being well developed, I should say. We have it. I think the only thing that we really does with tourism here is the hotels, sandals, and the what's coming here. I don't think it's a big much of agro tourism happening here. But if any, it is on a very large, very minute scale, I should say, not even small, minute. So that is just my.
St. Vincent?
Sorry?
I'm just wondering which country you're from.
St. Vincent's and the Grenadines.
Okay, fine. That's what I figured. When you said not much tourism happening here, I said that couldn't be St. Lucia, that couldn't be St. Kitts.
All right.
But even if you say there's not much tourism happening here, you can think of other markets. And I think edible flowers, to me, that's a product that would take off in the hotel sector, So I would definitely encourage you to proceed. Maybe if you don't think there's a big tourism market in your country, I'm sure it's something that could be considered for other countries nearby.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Because I want to start this off on a very small scale and see how it spills off. Because as you said, it's something new. It's not something I have ever done before. But I remember when I was in Tortola, one of my patient visitor came because I was a nurse, and when he came, he said edible flowers does very well on the market up there. So that's why I am interested in doing it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments?
There are none at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I will just proceed.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Okay. Okay, so I've spoken a bit about, well, I touched on the issue of supplying to the tourism sector, right? Because that is one of the key ways of linking agriculture and tourism. And there, I would just have touched briefly on it, but there are many facets to it. And one of the things is to better understand what are the products that the hotels need, and what it would take to produce some of those products. And typically, it's just a matter of being observant, what is it that the tourists are eating in the hotels, what is being sourced locally, what is being imported, can we make a dent on what is being imported? Things like that to be considered. Is there scope for more local sourcing? Are there local products that are just not being considered by the hotel sector? So that's a whole conversation that needs to happen between the two sectors. The other route is to bring tourism into rural communities, right? And again, quoting the UNWTO, these are tourist activities that are carried out in the rural area that aim to interact with rural life, know the traditions and the way of life of the people, and the attractions of the area of the product that is offered. And so when you're looking at tourism in the rural area, the rural tourism community, there are many opportunities that present itself that form the basis of pulling visitors into the rural area, that form the basis of attracting visitors to the rural area. So starting, you have your rural heritage. A lot of heritage resides in rural areas, your traditional architecture. Some of this is industrial heritage. In other countries, it may be castles, maybe in our, communities, it may be churches, the village structure, I know for example, in St. Kitts and Nevis, I'm very well aware of the sugar mills, those kind of tall block structures that dot the St. Kitts and Nevis landscape, and that in a sense is like an industrial heritage from your sugarcane past. In terms of rural activities, farming activities, fishing, riding, cycling, walking, all the different types of activities that the rural landscape, lends itself to, right? Then you have, and I'm sure, it can expand beyond what is listed here, your rural life, crafts, local events, the food that is available, the traditional music. Some of it is even sometimes traditional dress, traditional customs, these things that are special to rural communities, and sometimes that are often taken for granted. And then just your general landscape, your countryside, the mountains, the hills, the lakes, the rivers, the scenery, the forest, the nature, all of these things, by themselves and together make the rural community an attractive place that tourism would want to visit, so definitely it's something to look at your rural community and to see what are the assets, right? What are the assets within the community that can pull tourism? So these are some of the things to be considered. And sometimes there's a way that you can, if you're scanning your community to see what are some of the possibilities, create an inventory of, what is in your rural community, what is something that can be sold as a tourism experience. And so when we look at rural tourism and, how did this concept of rural tourism even emerge? We really and truly, it emerged in Europe. Farmers would rent rooms in their homes, and they promoted coexistence with the families and their customs. So people from the cities, would make visits to the countryside, rent a room in a farmer's home and learn about, farm lifestyle and so forth. And so there was focus on accommodation and exploring the countryside and small towns. And so, governments in some of these European countries actually fostered the development of rural tourism in Europe. And it was seen as a way to diversify income. So there was less dependence on agriculture. Some of the key market drivers, were how to people from the cities wanted to be able to connect with heritage and the rural lifestyle. And there was this interest in peace and quiet, access to nature, engagement in exercise, the walking, the cycling, the climbing, and all of these things you could, have access to easily in a rural environment. And as such, the concept of rural tourism took off. And so some of the examples were, as I said, one of the key examples is, going on a stay in a rural community, right? So finding an accommodation in a rural community. So accommodation is perhaps the most essential element, or ingredient in the rural tourism equation. Because one of the things that the tourism statistics have shown is that overnight visitors are really valuable. It's nice for people to come and visit during the day and explore an area, but they can stay. If you can get them to stay in your community, then they'll spend the revenue that can be earned from that visitor who is resident in your community for, say, 2 days, 3 days, 3 nights or so, can be up to more than 300% more than day visitors. And as such, a lot of the rural tourism that you saw emerging in Europe focused on rural accommodation and, providing a very quaint, homely option, that was attractive to people coming from the city, get away from the hustle and bustle and enjoy peace and quiet in a rural accommodation. So this is actually an example. I'm just trying to see if I have it right. This is actually an example of a bed and breakfast, an English bed and breakfast. And, you get your tea and the things that come with your tea and so forth. And it feels very homely and authentic. Some of the things that we have to think about from our end in the Caribbean, if we, promote rural accommodations in our Caribbean territories, what would be our selling points? What is it that would be our calling card? What would we be offering to visitors to make them feel like they're having an authentic country stay, whether it is in St. Kitts or St. Lucia or St. Vincent and Grenadines? In England, it is tea time, but what would it be, for example, in St. Lucia or one of the other countries that I've just mentioned? And then, so that was England. Now this is France. And in France, there is a concept of a French gîte. And again, a gîte is a countryside home. And so these, again, would be rented out to visitors, typically from the urban areas, right? And so, this is a French style of accommodating visitors in the rural territories. And so based on this, Europe is considered a leader and the largest global provider of rural tourism. And there's an organization known as Rural Tour, previously known as Eurogîtes. And it is an umbrella group comprising of organizations from 25 countries in Europe. And it markets and lobbies on behalf of rural tourism operators all across Europe. And it's estimated that rural tourism supports 900,000 direct and indirect jobs in Europe and generates 150 billion euro in gross income each year. I'm going to, when I send, I think there's an updated website because they changed the name from Eurogits to World Tour. And as such, when I send out this presentation, I will update the website so that everyone can go on the website and see how it is, you know, this collective of world tourism providers across Europe are promoting themselves. So that's another thing, you know. It's one thing to have the offering, but then it's also how you promote it and how you collaborate, you know, amongst yourselves to promote your rural tourism offerings. And in the case of you know, one of the larger organizations within this grouping is the Gîtes de France, because it has been so well established in France to offer rural accommodation and rural tourism options. Now, as we move now from Europe to Latin America. So whereas the focus in Europe has been on rural accommodation as a route through which you know, visitors access, you know, various elements of the rural community. In Latin America, there has been a focus on something known as agri-food routes, right? And so agri-food routes are tourism routes that are built around key agricultural products within a region. And so, for example, this is a map of a wine route in the tourism belt, the wine tourism belt in southern Argentina, right? So southern Argentina is an area that is well known for wine production. And this route comprises traditional farms, industrial wineries, even museums, so that, you know, people can treat it as a destination, okay? So there's a quote here, you know, tourism is, and it's connecting, in this case, the tourism to that product that is being promoted in this particular agri-food route. And that tourism is very similar to wine, and it's connected with creating and selling pleasure. So Argentina is actually the largest producer of wine in South America and the 5th largest in the world, and is increasingly receiving a number of wine-related tourists, right? And as a result of the growing number of tourists, wineries, remember, these essentially would have been grape, you know, they're grape farms that produce wine, right? But the tourism part of the business have so increased that the wineries have begun to hire dedicated staff, hold special musical and arts events, build restaurants and small hotels on their wine estates. Initially, this diversification into tourism was seen as a way to increase the visibility of the brands, the wine brand. However, as it has grown, it has become a means of increasing wine sales, and in some cases, up to 50% of the income to some of these wineries are as a result of the tourism businesses that these establishments are doing. And as a result, in particularly for some of the larger wine companies, sales have increased significantly as the tourism to these wine routes have grown. And then there's another trail. This one now is in Mexico, right? And it's called La Ruta del Tequila, also in English known as the Tequila Trail. And it has become so popular that it is now a UNESCO recognized World Heritage Site. And it comprises of a road network that connects around 8 towns around this tequila volcano. That is which is the principal tequila production area. And for those of you who might not be familiar, tequila is an alcoholic drink that is derived from a particular crop in Mexico, right? And so the route has become a cultural and gastronomic destination and venue for tequila themed festivals and events, right? So they have been receiving increased numbers of visitors for this tequila sale. The increase in visitors has actually produced a hotel building boom in the town of Tequila, right? And it's only within the past 10 to 12 years that you've had a few tequila distilleries offering tours and tastings. So this is something that, you know, has happened very quickly, right? So the tequila route comprises tequila culture, craft, archaeological sites, and tourist spots. And there are various ways in which you can enjoy and access this tequila trail. Visitors can journey by bus, by train, by motorcycle, and even walk sections of the trail. There are tequila trains that allow for onboard tequila tastings, mariachi band performances, and serving of traditional Mexican cuisine. And so, you know, once you kind of establish a route, you know, it just mushrooms, it just grows, you know, in terms of what is possible and what can be offered. And visitors will come because there's something, there's a product, there's a culture that is being offered that is of interest to visitors. So this is, for example, another map of the route, right? And it shows you various stops along the route. So typically these things are mapped, so you know visitors can kind of make a determination of where they want to go. That on the picture on the right is a picture of one of the tequila trains, you know, the Jose Cuervo Express. And so, you know, that's another experience in and of itself to be able to experience the route via train. And then we now go back to Argentina, right? And the picture that you're seeing is of a very popular drink or tea known as the yerba mate, right? And it is consumed literally throughout the day by Argentinians. They will sip this drink. It's a hot drink out of these very beautiful mugs all day long. They share it amongst themselves. It is almost a part of being Argentinian, right? And so naturally, they have created a yerba mate route. And if you see that quote, you know, it says the Muslims have Mecca, the Jews and Christians have Jerusalem, but essentially in Argentina, we have the yerba mate route, right? Because it is so culturally significant to the Argentinians. And for the yerba mate route, you know, people who visit that route, they will learn about the entire yerba mate production process, from the large plantations to the final products harvesting, what is involved in terms of the drying, the milling, the canning. Visitors can taste different types of yerba, traditional, organic, and they can discover its energizing properties. And there's even a mate ceremony, which is apparently an important part of Argentinians' daily life, you know. So some of the other elements of the roots, well, of course, the producers, you know, of the yerba mate, there's various agro industries connected to the yerba mate. There's, of course, restaurants, bars, coffee shops, historical and cultural sites, of course, lodging, accommodation. You have traditional hotels, you have yerba mate ranches, hostels, cabins, bungalows, so the range of accommodation is available. Eco lodges, camping grounds, you know. And of course, associated with it, your travel and tourism companies and your transportation services. So it is an entire package that makes, you know, the execution and access to these routes available to visitors, right? Because, you know, the tourist, all of these things kind of fit together to make it essentially a tourism destination. But it's built around local production and local products and local culture. And then I think this is the final route that we're looking at. Here we will go to Colombia, and this is the coffee route, right? Known as El Eje Cafetero, or the coffee access of Colombia. And now this is a route covering the main coffee growing regions in Colombia. Coffee culture in Colombia has actually also, similar to the tequila route, been put on the UNESCO World Heritage List. It comprises several coffee plantations, also similar to the wine plantations in Argentina, that offer accommodation. And those who visit the route, they can do plantation tours and other attractions and activities such as biking, hiking, visits to nature reserves and waterfalls. There are also special festivals and special events at selected time of the year within this route. All right, I am actually going to stop here again. So as I said, I'll just take breaks every now and again when I come to the end of sections to see if anyone has any comments or questions.
So far, none. Okay, Melissa hand is up. So Melissa, you were given permission before, so you can go ahead, please.
All right, good night again. Okay, so one of my major concern I've not seen, maybe I have not, because I've not been observing. I don't know if you have it there, but stuff that people can do. You know, it is enjoyable to come to your country and do something rather than just come in and just buy the end product. Why not involve them in making like a little clip art? Because I mean, you can't walk with a large stuff back with you, like a souvenir. Even like you call the thing called the epoxy, the thing that we use, the flowers, the keychains and so forth. Why don't someone at least use some flowers, get the stuff organized, and so that the tourists could have a experience, and then they make something for someone, they make something for themselves, and it's memorable. I made that in St. Vincent. I mean, something that, you know, remember, even like a little small breadfruit leaf or something, you know, or the ganja leaf, not to say I'm promoting ganja, but you know, something that makes them feel, you know, they have come here and they have, this is what they made and this is what is exposed in certain Caribbean countries. I don't know if it's been explored. Also, is there any linkage between the Caribbean and the tourism sector in agri-tourism? Because if there is, I would like to know, because to me, I have not seen. They will say that yes, they're going to this country to see what they're doing and they'll come back, and you know, but one of my major concerns is that persons are leaving to go into the agriculture sector. They're going tourism, they're going to the degree, and when they come back, they sit in the office, they get their salary, and they do nothing beside, oh, it's all about the salary. A lot of persons, you can't tell persons, children now, that, oh, you're going to be agriculture, oh, my child is doing agriculture, because their mindset is that agriculture is the back breaking of going into the hot sun. Like this morning, I went to manure my soil. I mean, there was not more water, but just my God to get some things done. So I think even from a little or from the school sector, I don't think it is actually, oh Lord, attractive. It's not been an attractive sector or subject area, and a lot of people want to go to engineer, doctors, lawyers, and then so we'll have no farmers and we'll have no food to eat unless we buy it. That's why cost of living in, especially food in St. Vincent, is so expensive now. Thank you.
Okay, so just to answer your first question in terms of essentially almost like making trinkets that the visitors can take back home. Definitely, I think that is an activity that would be very interesting or very appealing to tourism. So that's definitely something that can be added. In terms of the connection between the agriculture and tourism sector, you're saying that you don't think there's sufficient connection based on what you're seeing in your own country. This is something I would definitely want to throw it to the participants. I didn't get it, I got one response in my last query, but in your country, right? And I hope I can at least get 5 responses. at least one from each of the countries. How connected do you think the tourism sector and the agricultural sectors are?
Okay, for me in St. Vincent, they are saying that they have linkages. They may have on a small, minute. Where is that? Okay, it's probably on a large scale for those persons who are in well established, but to trickle down to the persons who is like the layman, let me say call it the layman. I don't think it is much unless we're exporting their food. For instance, when I was in Tortola, I buy provision up there, and the provision doesn't taste as nice as in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I'll be honest, because it beats the seawater come up. And by the time it gets there and it's into quarantine and it's into the process, by it gets there, it's already lost its flavor. But when I come into Simmons, the food is it tastes healthy, it's better, but I don't know how the economy in St. Vincent have come over the last 3 years. It's very provision is very expensive in St. Vincent. Very, very, very expensive. I don't know why, but we are like the basket we provide. So therefore, we should not be that expensive unless we're importing. Our citrus fruit sector has been impacted badly by, I just said, some kind of oh Lord, pests or something that damaged our citrus fruit. So we now have to import. And when I came to St. Vincent, I went and I bought 4 oranges, which is almost similar to what I get out of bringing North America to Tortola, and it is costing me 16 EC dollars, and I refuse to buy it because we have good soil here. We have volcanic, so our gold mine, we sit in St. Vincent, sits on a gold mine that's called agricultural land. We sit in a gold mine and we're not doing anything with it besides becoming lawyers and doctors and police and teachers and all the other engineers, etc., etc. Thank you. That's my point of view.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Anyone else? Anyone else who wants to speak? Because
Yes.
Okay.
Just give me a minute. Okay, sorry about that. The rain was beating down quite heavy and the internet was dropping. So there are a few persons' hands that are up. So I will go with Roxanne, Emmanuel, then Bailey. Then we'll move on to the Q&A in the chat box and the Q&A in the box section. I'm also going to post the poll up so you can vote in the meantime. Thank you. Roxanne, you can go on ahead, please. Roxanne? Okay, so I'm assuming Roxanne is not hearing me, so we'll go with Emmanuel.
Hi,
Okay.
good evening. Can you hear
I
me?
think Roxanne has unmuted, so let Roxanne
Okay,
go.
so let's Roxanne go ahead, and then we'll go back to you. We'll come back to you, Emmanuel. Thank you. Could go ahead, Roxanne. Roxanne, I see that you're on mute, but if you're speaking, we're not hearing you. So with that, I'm going to just mute you for a little bit, and then let Emmanuel and Bailey go ahead, and then we'll come back to you if that's okay.
Hi, good evening. Well, to the point the person made a while ago regarding in St. Lucia, we have something called Export St. Lucia, where we get farmers around the island to actually package, prepare, and sell their products to foreign countries. This has aided in even like the laymen getting opportunities to sell the products, whether it is from the sea or it is from the land. However, you know, anything that you have to export overseas, it needs certain standards. And sometimes the standards, persons do not want to keep up with the standards because standards might end up being expensive and cutting back in some of, you know, the profit. So they try to make shortcuts, and that alone ruins the opportunity for others. But that export St. Lucia is something that is new, and it is doing very well with our people in terms of, like, I think the newest thing on the market is the sea moss, and they call it, oh, there's another name for it. Irish moss, but it's the sea moss, and that is going all over the world, and it is amazing. So I believe it has to be the agricultural ministry has to take a big role in how we export the country, or how we sell parts and the provisions and everything from from our lands. And I think standards and all of these things have to be maintained so that we can continue, so that it can be continued.
Thank you, Emmanuel. But could you speak? You mentioned export, but what about the hotel sector? Is there that similar? Are there programs to enable farmers to supply to the hotel sector?
Definitely, definitely. I was really thinking about exporting, but definitely the hotels, our supermarkets, well, Massy now is in St. Lucia. It takes a huge chunk of our local produce and for resale. So that's, I think, what we need to do is standards. Standards are important. And I don't think a company or a hotel or even an exporting firm will take something that is not of good standard. So that's where we have to begin as farmers, to maintain proper standards so that we can be respected in our field.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Emmanuel.
Okay, so Roxanne, if you can speak now, you can go ahead. If not, we will then proceed with the next person whose hand is raised, and then we could get back to you. So you can go ahead now, Roxanne. Okay. So Bailey, Kamisha, you could go ahead. I now give you permission to speak, so you can go ahead.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to kind of give us some feedback on what Melissa was saying in terms of St. Vincent and our, seeming absence of the agri-tourism side of things. I think that from my own little experience, working with students at the technical level, etc., I think that what we lack is exposure. So maybe the students who get into agriculture, not a lot of them get the opportunity to travel. And if they travel, is not to do or experience these types of tours and the kind of things that we're seeing in the presentation. So because they don't have the perspective and the experience, it's sometimes hard for them to, from that young age, get the ideas. And more of the older persons who are already in tourism, they do the typical ventures, and it would need a lot of investment, a private sector investment, and investment from government stakeholders as well to establish these types of things. So I think a lot of the times, the persons who have the ideas, they might not necessarily have the funding. So I think that if we are able to kind of instill in the younger generation from the time when they are in the tertiary level, when they get into agriculture, just try to have more opportunities for them to be exposed to see these things so that they could feel motivated. Because it's one thing somebody tells you about something in school, but it's another thing to actually experience it, see it and live it, and then feel more motivated. And a lot of the persons who we have working in the different ministries, sometimes they themselves, they have the education, but they don't have the exposure. So they are not always able to guide as best they could. So they also could benefit from some help. But like I really appreciate the presentation and seeing the different routes and what the different countries are doing. And I think that St. Vincent really has the potential to do some of these things once we get the investment. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before we get back to you, Melissa, I just wanted to answer some questions that is in the chat. So the first one is, can herbs be added to your agritourism business? And if so, how can one integrate herb flowers, flora, and also vegetables and food into agritourism business?
Okay, so definitely herbs. To be honest with you, anything can be integrated into agritourism. And I mean, we're gonna, as we proceed through the presentation, you'll see some of the ways in which you can integrate different things. Once you can make it attractive, once you can create a story around it, once you can make a link between what the tourist has interest in and some utility or benefit between what you're offering, right? So herbs typically can be seen as very therapeutic, for example. And one segment of the tourism business that is also growing by leaps and bounds is the wellness tourism. And so if you can, you create some kind of concept, for example, with herbs that can link to wellness tourism and how you use herbs in a kind of a therapeutic way, because you can, I mean, in people in the Caribbean, you use herbs for everything. Your back hurt, you drink this kind of herb. Your stomach hurting, you drink another kind of herb. I was actually affiliated with one particular rural tourism activity. We started it, but it had its setbacks of actually trying to set up a herb garden in a rural community as a tourism attraction. And so we created these boards that showed all the various benefits of these various herbs. And then we had it in plots so you could see what it looks like growing and so forth. And people can, pick a mint leaf and smell it and squash it and that sort of thing. And tourists can take it away with them, so herbs definitely can have a lot of usage. And vegetables, it is how you package what you have and sell it and for that particular tourism segment. Any other comments or questions? I know you're going through some of the questions in the chat, so you can you could probably go to the next one.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for that. Jacqueline is asking, if one were to create a garden, what would it be called?
As in a name for a garden?
That is what I'm assuming.
Oh, okay. It's really what is appealing to you, what is in your garden, and how it can connect with what tourists have interest in, people like nature, people like things that are pretty, so it is really, I don't know, you can maybe call it some kind of paradise, nature's paradise. Just a name alone sometimes can get people to want to come to your location, and you have to make it look welcoming as well. Any other comment or
Yes.
question?
Yes, please. So the next one would be, Wendy's asking, do we have any established agritourism route or tours in the Caribbean?
I am not necessarily know of any routes in the Caribbean. There are examples of agritourism locations. There are two of them that I will mention at the end of the presentation. And there are many others that are cropping up. So throughout this presentation, you would see some examples across the Caribbean. I know, for example, in Jamaica, where I live, they are trying to, or they have initiated the start of what we call a Blue Mountain coffee route, because the coffee that is exported from Jamaica, there is a brand associated with the location in which it is grown. And as such, they have initiated the establishment of, a coffee route within that particular location. But, I'm not necessarily familiar with other routes across the Caribbean that link agriculture and tourism.
Thank you. The next question would be, how long does it take to develop those tours?
Sometimes it takes quite a bit of time. It takes time to gain traction. It takes time to promote. and gain interest. It takes time to develop the infrastructure around a tourism establishment, agritourism establishment. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a route. Some of the examples that you will see are, you know, actual locations, even within the Caribbean, that offer agri-tours. You know, I mean, cocoa/chocolate is one of the more popular ones, and there are others. But it does require some level of investment to turn your farm or your plantation into something that is safe for visitors to come to, something that's attractive for visitors to come to. So I will not kid persons in saying that it's an overnight venture. I think it's something that does take time, effort, and investment, particularly if you want to do it well.
All right, thank you so much. We have two hands that are up. So I'm gonna mute Justin and give her permission to speak to ask a question. So you could go ahead, Miss Justin.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I wanted to speak to the point the presenter was asking about how the different islands marry agriculture and tourism. And I'm speaking based on St. Lucia. I think that we have really been making a big effort to do just this, marry agriculture and tourism. In St. Lucia, we have places like Grand Eden Estate, which is I think Fort Jacques, where tourists can actually come in. They do an entire tour and they have this farm to table experience where they actually pick crops and they actually cook food that is grown on the land, and tourists can actually make their own, get involved in the cashew nut making process. They pick the berries, they eat the food that comes from the land as they tour the property. We have places like Hotel Chocolat where they can actually make their own chocolate from the cacao that's grown there, and also places like Kako Setlisi, where they get that experience of actually making, going through the whole process of making chocolate, etc. So I think we have been really trying this. I know there are other places as well, but I mean, these are the three that come to mind right away. And because we have this thing called the Jimmies, where our different tourism areas, whether it is the hotels and the different aspects, farmers, etc., are being recognized, we find that a lot of our people are trying to step up in terms of marine agriculture and tourism. So I think we have been making a lot of headway. Of course, there's lots of room for improvement, as one of the fellow Senatians spoke earlier, and she spoke about standards. I know we need to maintain the standard, but I think we have been making a lot of effort where that is concerned, and we have been doing a really good job in St. Lucia. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Justin.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you so much. I saw Melissa's hand was up, but I'm not too sure if she wants to ask a question. You could go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, and what I have, another question really, but what I like 2 days ago, I bought these two books, and one called Shakes and one called Juices. One of the things that is I see on the market now here is local juices. But I think when we have the peak season for tourism, what can be when these buses are going around support, they should even have these local juices. I mean, displaying them. I think one of the things what the lady said, presentation is one of standards, and presentation is one of the selling factors, right? Because if you don't present your stuff in an attractive way, persons really want. Because I would tell you, majority of these tourists who leave off the ship, when they come here, majority of the time they don't spend a lot of money. I would tell you, they might buy a little bit of a snack or something, majority, because these people pay. So if you don't make things attractive, they're not going to take part. That is just the realistic, because they more look for souvenirs to take back with. But if you could do something, attract them, to make them involved in something, or to do something that is totally different than another Caribbean island, it's like a unique experience, then I think they will take part in it, because they will want to have that experience to take back to their journey, or even to write about it. So I think it's something presentation, and again, finance. I think finance is one of the major key factor in some of it, because sometimes you don't have finance to do, as again, the tourism, the agriculture sector need to work together with the tourism sector and with persons who are on the ground, the farmers, to see, or persons, young entrepreneur persons, to help them to market their stuff, or to even to see how they could develop them, rather than just everybody. Yes, book is experience. I mean, book is good, but without the persons to do the work, we are nowhere. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Miss Jessup. Miss Barbo, you're the Helen's daughter facilitator, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think I will continue now if that is okay.
Yes,
Or if
sure.
there's any other questions or hands up?
Just one statement and a question, but we
Okay,
can
we'll deal
answer
with
that
them
question.
quickly and then I'll proceed.
Okay. Well, Anastasia just want to make note that here in St. Kitts, she often experience called Blam and Bond, where local visitors can come and she will go with them and created DIY beauty products while using their local fruits, flowers, and seed. And she have entered into a partnership with Tourism Authority and International Hotel to promote the activities to guests. It's been well received and it fit into other activities that focus on linked agro-goods and tourism. Her island is small, so she had to find creative ways to expand it.
Congratulations, Anastasia. Maybe a little later we can share a little bit more. You can share a little bit more on that experience.
And the last question would be how hard it is to get insurance for the farm when it pertains to tours.
That's a big issue. That's a big issue because tourism is highly insured because of the potential risks involved. One of the solutions that I have heard that it's going to be hard for every farm to necessarily get insurance, right? So there is, for example, a tour company I once was speaking to about the issue, and what they did, the tour company gets the insurance, and the tour company's insurance essentially covers the various farm stops that tour will go to. And so it is a more economical way of addressing the tourism insurance issue. All right, but I'm going to proceed. Where is this? I'm moving forward. Okay. All right. So, we have looked at, some of what's happening in Europe, some of what's happening in Latin America, the scale of tourism on the international scene. And we're now going to look at some of the trends, the tourism trends that are making the rural tourism a real opportunity, right? So typically tourism has been associated, particularly in the Caribbean, with sun, sand, sea. Outside of the Caribbean, maybe museum, monuments of history and great culture. However, since the 1980s, they're begun to see a differentiated tourism products. So the tourist offer has expanded considerably, and there's now strong development in cultural tourism, sports tourism, nature, adventure, and of course, rural tourism. So on the screen, you'll see some of the trends, the tourism trends that make the tourism offering, a rural tourism offering, more attractive and more feasible and on more demand from the tourists. The UNWTO 2019 International Tourism Highlights publication, for example, identified the following traveling trends. When you see their travel to change, it is the tourists want to live a kind of slightly different life when they visit a location. They want to live like a local. They want authenticity. They want almost to have a transformation-like experience. And this now the concept of travel to show. We're living in this social media age. People want Instagrammable moments. They want to be able to post on social media an experience that is completely different from the way of life that they would normally have. The pursuit of a healthy life, right? In your rural environment, you may have more ability to have that type of healthy life that you maybe can't necessarily have as easily in an urban environment, the walking, wellness activities, access to healthier foods, for example. And there's this concept of the access economy. People can gain access to goods and service rather than having to own it themselves. There are various ways that people travel. People travel alone, people travel with families. And then there's a rising awareness of sustainability. The issues are relating to climate change and environment. So if people can go to more pristine environments that feel that sense of environmental sustainability. Then people want to go off the beaten path. They want to meet local people. They want to be immersed in culture. And this is information coming out of the Community-Based Tourism Enterprise Handbook, which was produced by Compete Caribbean. They want to actively participate, right? Rather than just simply stand as a bystander. You're just simply observing. They want to be involved in an experience, not just to watch, but to be active in that experience. But yet they still want to be comfortable and they want to feel safe. So despite all of these different things that people want to do, we have to still ensure that it is safe and comfortable. People want to have fun experiences that can't be done at home, and they want to take home memorable stories to share with friends and family. So if you travel, if you leave your country, you want to experience something different from what you experience every day. And oftentimes that rural environment provides the opportunity for that different type of experience. And rural tourism is not new, right? This is a conference, an international conference, World Agri-Tourism Day. This was the 2023 version. And you notice it was the 16th World Agri-Tourism Day, right? So they've been doing this for quite a couple of years. I've actually participated as a presenter in this conference more than once. And so in other parts of the world, the concept of agritourism has set in, even outside of, say, Europe and Latin America, for example. This particular conference is led largely out of India, for example. So in Asia, it's taken root as well. And if you see the quote, we have to really consider how we change our approach when the primary sector contributes the least to our GDP and the tertiary sector contributes the most. And by tertiary, by primary, we're talking about agriculture, and by tertiary, we're talking about tourism. And so why not combine the best of both to ensure inclusive growth, right? And as the concept of agritourism and rural tourism has grown, and the fact that these tourism trends that were discussed in the previous slide, one of the motivations also is the change in demographic of the tourists. Younger travelers are not interested so much in sameness, okay? Whereas the older generation, they may have been willing to go to the same resort year after year and order the same watered down pina colada from a pina colada mix. Younger people want a more authentic experience. And so there is a growing market for rural tourism if properly executed, right? And so as the demographics of the tourists change, you're beginning to see a change in what people want from a tourist destination. And so we're gonna look at, what are some of the things that are involved in creating a tourism destination out of a farm or a rural community, and the various elements. So for example, looking at attractions, accommodation, the culinary or food aspect, health and wellness, which I mentioned before, or being part of a route, right? And so there's a lot of creativity that is required to transform what people might just see as a mere farm into an attraction. So, you know, you have to look at what the tourists might be interested in. Is it the farm itself? Is it the food connected to the farm? What is the curiosity that will link a person to want to see the production activities? And sometimes you have to work backward from the actual food. You know, there's a, like, for example, mention was made of chocolate, you know. Chocolate is a very desirable commodity. People are addicted to chocolate. So anything related to chocolate will be of interest. And so that is why you'll have cocoa plantation tours or making chocolate activities and so forth. And you can build so much around this particular product and working backwards from the product because of the iconic nature of this particular product. But you can do the same thing for other products. You know, you just have to find a way how to sell it and how you create an experience involving sometimes more than one element that can incorporate into your agricultural or farm type tour. So I'm actually going to show a video of a agritourism experience in Colorado, USA. So I'm going to actually, let me go back. I'm going to actually click on the link, but I'm going to have to pause it because more than likely I'm going to actually have to go to the link. I'm not sure if it's going to play for my presentation. So just give me a few seconds so that I can make this video available to you. So I'm just going to stop sharing from my presentation and share from the actual YouTube video. So give me a few seconds. I'm going to start to play. If you're not hearing audio, let me know, and I might have to make some further adjustments. Okay, did anybody hear the audio?
I did not on my end.
Okay, that's what I suspect. Just give me a second. Let me just, I'm going to try and just share the audio through the Zoom.
All right, thank you.
But did you see the video?
No, I just see your screen, which is just basically your face.
Okay, fine, no problem.
No problem.
Okay, you're seeing the video, I hope now?
Yes, I am.
Are you hearing the audio?
There is no sound.
There's no sound. Okay, let
I'm
me try.
assuming it didn't play because the it's not playing. The icon is
No, it's paused now. I played it for a few seconds just to find out if anybody heard the audio. But
well,
you're saying
no.
you didn't hear any audio. Okay, let me just ensure that I connect to audio.
Right, thanks.
One more time. Oh, geez.
And people can also come stay here and learn more about what farm life is like.
Okay, did anybody hear audio?
Yes, please.
All right, is it loud enough or does it have to be increased?
It's loud on my end. Let me just check the
I
chat
see a
and
lot of thumbs up, so that means it's hopefully people were hearing.
yes, so no comments, so I'm assuming it's loud. It's perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna start over from the beginning so everybody can hear.
Thank you.
Looks more like a tool shed or a farm than a hotel. Well, that's because it is. The Platte River Fort here near Greeley is an agro-tourism location. That means it's a working farm, and people can also come stay here and learn more about what farm life is like, all without losing those five-star accommodations. Welcome to a place where the longhorn cattle often outnumber the guests.
He's super, super sweet.
Where the rooms move locations with the seasons.
This is a Conestoga wagon.
And life on the farm meets fine dining and spas.
We want people to have an understanding and get the experience of what it's like to be on a working farm and ranch.
You could call Platte River Fort a hotel, but it's more than that.
We're somewhere between a lodge, a bed and breakfast, a small resort.
Sitting on more than 200 acres of northern Colorado farmland,
We have a lot of hiking trails.
it's best to take a side-by-side to get to your room.
We're headed down to what we call Yurt Village.
Yurt tents line the riverbank, filled with beds, pillows, chairs, and yes,
You
wine.
get to feel like you're camping and be in nature, have a nice fire at night, sit by the fire, and yet we kind of do everything for you.
And if a tent, even this tent, is still a little out of your comfort level, maybe a wagon is more your style.
It sleeps 4, it has a king-size bed and a set of bunk beds in it.
Platte River Fort is a working farm, but it also serves a purpose beyond what the land produces.
This creates a really unique opportunity for people to get a new perspective and see how other people that they think are different from themselves are actually a lot more alike.
The property is centered around a replica of Bent's Fort in La Junta, with rooms facing out towards the river.
This is some place to come and have an experience.
An experience that's sure to be an adventure. And you can stay in those yurts for the next couple of months. Once winter comes, they put them away until the spring. But that covered wagon has heating and air conditioning. You can stay in it year round. In Greeley, I'm Mark Salinger, 9 News.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to stop. So that's a little snippet of, what a farm tourism can look like. I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the presentation. Okay, is everybody back on the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so let's continue. Okay, so now what we just saw was a combination of farm attraction, providing accommodation. But let's just say you are interested in creating an attraction. You may have a farm or some other type of rural type activity or location. And think about how you can infuse fun into your farm tour, combine education with entertainment. I don't know if you ever heard the term edutainment, for example. How you can infuse heritage and culture into the experience. Can the farm on its own or with other or allied to other activities become part of an adventure? I was in a particular Caribbean country last year, and we were looking at creating agritourism activities. And we were in a farming location, but it was a farming area that had little, you see like this picture? It literally had narrow waterways going through the farms. And I thought to myself, wouldn't that be an amazing experience if you could do the farm tour by boat? And in that particular area that we were in, it was possible because the water was everywhere, so you have to kind of think outside of the box, and see. And, for example, I don't know, back in the day, donkeys, for example, were very prevalent in rural areas and on farms. You could have a donkey or even a horse-drawn cart as a way to explore a farm, so you have to think about how you really make this an experience, how you make it something that is memorable, something that is different. Yes, it's a farm tour, but what else can you add to that experience, for example, so that it becomes an adventure? Accommodation, right? We started our conversation on the birth of rural tourism by talking about the importance of accommodation, if you can get people to stay rather than just visit for a few hours. And there are various ways you can have accommodation. This doesn't have to be a massive hotel. I mean, you know, look here, you're talking about tents, right? You can have tents as an accommodation option. And there is this concept of glamping. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the term, which is essentially glamorous tenting. And you would have seen some of it when you saw that that farm location in oh God, what was it? Where was the location? It's in the USA, and tents were one of the options that they offered as accommodation. But the tents look nice. The tents look like somewhere you'd actually want to stay. You know, they looked comfortable. They looked like they were well equipped. So, you know, there are various options. It doesn't have to be high end. You know, rooms in people's homes, you know, that can be an accommodation option. So we have to think broad, and we have to work with what we have resource access to. Okay. And then when you talk about culinary, that's a whole nother, you know, another arena that has just grown by leaps and bounds, right? And another quote here from UNWTO, a former Secretary General, with food so deeply connected to its origin, this focus allows destinations to market themselves as truly unique, appealing to those travelers who look to feel part of their destination through its flavors. And the food comes from rural communities where the farm is located. So how do you translate that interest into food, into an interest into where the food comes from? Okay, and so there's a big thing on farm to table dining. There are some hotels across the Caribbean that are offering that experience. But some of the things to take note of, you know, the concept of foodies, people who travel for food, who, you know, make food a big thing of what they do. Food tourists, they tend to have a higher than average expenditure, right? They're demanding, and they don't necessarily like sameness. Thus the culinary offering cannot be bland and anonymous. The food offering must have personality. If you look at this picture, the food on this plate, on this table, it has personality. You know, it's just attractive. It makes you want to take part in it. Gastronomy, or, you know, culinary tourism offers allow tourists to access the cultural heritage of a place through its food, through tasting what is available. And it offerings appeal to the need of this new cultural consumer. And also to bear in mind that tradition and innovation can coexist. Gastronomy is a process of continuous evolution. So you can renew and adapt culinary offerings to the needs of this particular customer who is interested in food. So yes, you're using traditional food, but you can upscale it. You can modify, you know, to make it exotic, for example. And there's this concept of terroir. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it properly. It's the French terminology for territory, and essentially connotes what it is about a particular location that differentiates it and gives it a source of local identity. And the concept of terroir in the food and drink that you consume is very big, okay? And so destinations need to create and articulate credible and authentic narratives about the food tourism offerings. And so I am actually going to jump to another video, so bear with me. This is actually a farm to table dining experience in Jamaica, and they have gotten, you know, rave reviews, you know. So again, please bear with me while I stop share and bring up this video.
Stush in the Bush really embodies this whole thought around
Did anyone hear the video?
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Great, let me proceed.
rustic gourmet. The philosophy in itself is that we want you to learn how to fall in love with your food. It's not just about the food. It's about the entire experience.
It's been a rainy, windy morning. Zionite's farm at Stush in the Bush. What we're gonna do is to gather today's vegetables, greens, herbs, spices, fruits.
Parsley, cilantro, oregano. I'd like to make some fresh chimichurri sauce.
Whatever's gonna be on your menu, it's harvested fresh from the farm. I always describe Jamaica as a power center. There is a powerful energy just springing out of the earth. The connection with the earth is, I don't know, it's intrinsic for me. Oh. Breadfruit is a respect, it's a love, it's an appreciation, and it's also immediately you become a protector of that same earth.
Stush in the Bush is kind of the epitome of Chris and Lisa. The bushman, the Rasta, the down-to-earth with the shishi fufu, New York, Beijing, Brooklyn girl.
Working with my wife is a powerful experience. She will work from sunrise to sunset. She will work out everybody here, including me. Sometimes I have to hide, but that energy is what makes us do what we do and do it very well. I say we are the best at what we do because we are probably the only people doing exactly what we do. An experience where you can come into someone's home or someone's farm, dine with them, learning about the medicinal plants. You're learning about all different types of food. And I can guarantee you, the food you get here, you won't get anywhere else in Jamaica. That I know for sure. Good afternoon. How you doing? Good. What's up? Blessed. People just dig a genuine experience. And for us, this is our home. And when we welcome you into our home, we welcome you like one of the family.
It's just who we are. It's what we do. It's what we put forth. Food is at the base of it. Why not have it be its very best?
Okay, guys, here we go.
And why not have it filled with pure love in it? It's a love for Jamaica, a love for the land, a love for great food, and being able to share that experience with other people. That's what you take in when you're at Stush in the Bush.
First two ingredients on all our products, love and affection. Those are the first two ingredients, but I always assume that people know that. I don't even mention it. See, just like stout. If he hears the word love and just gets excited. Okay, boy. All right, okay. Love you too. Yeah, man.
Okay, so I'll just end here and stop share and go back to the presentation. Okay, so I mean, I hope you also like that video. If you Google Stush in the Bush and you see some of their reviews on TripAdvisors, it's like people are having an out-of-body experience when they go there. You know, there's nothing like authentic, making that connection, what you eat, and you actually see it grown. You know, and there are other examples, you know, of doing farm tours, being able to pick fruits, and so forth. But that's one example of people who have been able to execute very well. So let me continue. Health and wellness, right? I mentioned that a bit earlier. The concept of well-being, you know, is emerging, and it also can connote a connection to nature, relaxation, beauty, physical and spiritual health, and mental practices, right? There are a lot of ingredients that can be used in a spa experience that come from the farm, or just grow wild in your rural environments. Okay, and so a rural environment is ideal for offering well-being services. Think of things like lemongrass, mint, cocoa butter, coconut oil, ginger, honey. The list could go on and on. All of these have a kind of rejuvenating, there's a rejuvenating element to these sorts of products. And I'm sure in each of your countries, you probably have others that I probably am not even aware of, right? So health and wellness is also another big opportunity. I remember even speaking to someone, in Jamaica, and he wanted to offer a spa in a rural area, but because his concept was always that, these spas are in hotels, and so he needed some kind of water type experience, and he couldn't figure out how he could execute that. I said, listen, use the environment that you have, just the scenery that is in a rural environment would be attractive for a spa, right? So think outside of the box when it comes to health and wellness. And the question was raised earlier about the potential use of herbs, for example. Forming a route, think about, apart from what you may have to offer on your particular location, who else can you connect with? How can you combine locations, assets, resources to create a route, and that allows people to stay in your community for a longer time, right? So that is something else to give some thought, connecting with others to create this sort of route. And in terms of developing your ideas, and I've seen it in the chat, and other one or two persons may have mentioned it, that they either are starting or already have started. I took note from the chat, and I would love maybe towards the end to hear from, I had written down her name, I'm just not sure where I put it. I think her name was Jacqueline, and she was talking about creating an experience called Ancient Earth Escapes, So there are clearly people within this group who have ideas or who have actually started, and just some tips on developing your ideas. Look for opportunities, the gaps that are not being filled, how you can create something new. Scan your environment for the tourism possibilities. Research the history. Understand the culture so that you can offer that and you can represent that, right? I was associated with another particular tourism development in a rural area. And one of the things that we did, we commissioned a heritage study for the area. And when we said heritage, we actually commissioned two separate studies. What we call a natural heritage study, because your nature, your fauna is actually the heritage of your territory, the natural heritage of your territory. And we also commissioned a study on the man-made heritage, right? And it was based on these two, the information that came out of these studies, that we developed the branding, the theme, so that it is informed by the heritage of the area, which we could say we knew based on the fact that we gathered this information and we researched the information, right? Look at quality and customer satisfaction. Do research into your market, research the requirements for the types of markets that you're going after. Look at the suitability of the surrounding environment and sensitize the community. You want to bring tourists in, you can't have garbage around, right? So if it is that you have gone a sensitization program to get people to understand that having garbage is not going to provide an attractive environment for tourists to visit, that is something that you need to take on board, for example. Get the requisite guidance, create partnerships. It takes partnerships to get these things off the ground, particularly to market and promote your product. Test the market, right? Of course, consider safety, security, hygiene. Those three things are always on the top of visitors' minds when they're going anywhere, right? Become an expert at what you are doing. Look at the online reviews, for example. Look at what people are interested in, what people have problems with, what people don't like. So do your research, look at the competition, the trip advisors, etc., and try to exceed the visitors' expectations, right? Give even more value than they are anticipating. And those are ways in which you can execute your idea well. We know it needs resources, and we know that is a major constraint, financial resources, but sometimes you can do it little by little, and you don't necessarily need to get to the stage where you're perfect to start. Sometimes you need to start and phase in improvements over time. I remember once having a tour guide, a tour operator say that, you just need to start. You just need to start, and then it will improve and pick up. And so I am going to move on to some examples of agritourism in the Caribbean. This is a website of a location known as PEG Farm in Barbados. Okay, and so PEG Farm and Nature Reserve, they describe themselves as a biodynamic farm. Yes, I never heard that term before I heard about this location. And it offers farm tours, farm to table cafe, farm shop, camping, workshops on some of the property's practices. The farm is roughly around 100 acres, and it is geared towards health and wellness. So PEG is actually an acronym for People, Environment, and Growth. The farm features free-range livestock, cattle, pigs, chicken, a medicinal herb garden. Here, herbs coming back again, fruit orchard, and other food production and forested area. The tour of the farm and nature reserve. So they offer tours, for example, to schools on the property's biodynamic and permaculture principles, which advocate for restorative agricultural practices and improved environmental/ecological outcomes. So they're big on environmental sustainability. And so visitors can enjoy the tranquil setting and stunning views of the coastline from this hilltop retreat. Okay, and so the farm's produce become the ingredients for PEG's farm to table restaurant, which is called Chrysalis Cafe, and it serves innovative and nutritious dishes using fresh, locally grown food. All right, so that's one example that's located in Barbados. This second example, Belmont Estate. It's a premier tourism attraction in Grenada, offering visitors the opportunity to learn about rural Grenadian life through tours of its organic farm, cocoa processing facilities, heritage museum and gardens, and a Grenadian restaurant. The estate dates back to the 1600s, producing coffee, nutmeg, sugar, and cocoa, I think. Due to challenges in the sector, it sought to diversify its operations and thus it opened a tourism component in 2002. Currently, cocoa is its chief product, which is complemented by a variety of spices and the rearing of livestock. And they have a chocolate factory producing single source organic dark and milk chocolates. It has a heritage museum, gardens, goat dairy, which produces goat cheese, and a 250-seater Creole restaurant serving local foods and chocolate bonbon shop and gift shop. And so the Belmont Estate, I mean, this is a very fairly large scale. It employs approximately 80 to 100 workers and receives approximately 25,000 visitors per year. The company has been recognized regionally and internationally as best practice in agritourism and has played a pivotal role in Grenada's tourism industry. And one of the things that they're quoted as noting is that they have been able to create a union between tourism, food production, and the environment, and recognizing that these linkages are driven by the visitor's interests in good food, which is connected to good farming practices and a great holiday experience. And I think that sums up, that connection sums up how you can execute an agritourism venture well. right? How you make the connections across to ultimately end leading to what it becomes a holiday, a great holiday experience. All right, I'm going to move on quickly because I know we're running out of time, and I would love to facilitate some questions at the end. So my last case study is actually not a location, it's a product, right? And because I'm from Jamaica, I'm going to share the experience of Jamaican jerk. And it's tied to, when a food product goes viral. So jerk season, this is a quote, and it's essentially saying that it has become a global brand for Jamaica. And one of their largest manufacturers, for example, sells close to 3 million jars of jerk seasoning each year or globally. And so what has happened with jerk in Jamaica, right? Over a few decades, and I can tell you this, and this has happened in my lifetime, right? I have seen jerk transition from a small seaside lane, literally a little lane, and that was the only place you could get jerk, right? To become a product that is available across the globe. And one of the reasons why I'm mentioning this within this presentation is that the tourism sector helped to drive the popularity of jerk. And so it resulted in product development, through various bottled jerk sauces. When I was young, there was nothing called a jerk sauce in a bottle, for example. But they have been able to modify the product to make it attractive and accessible, right? To the tourism industry and to a broad range of consumers. One of the key things about jerk is that it is closely connected to the agricultural sector. The main ingredients in jerk are actually grown locally. For example, the scallion, the pepper, the pimento, the cane sugar. So in effect, Jamaican farmers have become one of the major beneficiaries of the rise of jerk. I mean, I was actually speaking even to one manufacturer that manufactures like pepper sauce and jerk sauce. And they said, the level of demand that they're seeing for these jerk sauces, they're struggling to even produce enough pepper, just to show you how one product can have such significant backward linkages into the farming sector. So now hundreds of farmers grow the ingredients that go into jerk. And there is, for want of a better word, a jerk ecosystem. So you have the farmer output, you have the jerk restaurants, you have complementary food pairings with jerk, you have the foodie tours, you have the various products, the bottled jerk sauce, the rub, the seasoning, there's everything now, marinade, whatever not, right? And then of course there's export revenue, and there's even now the jerk festivals, right? So even when I Google jerk festivals, there are multiple jerk festivals in Jamaica and outside of Jamaica. So there's this whole ecosystem that has been created just from one food product that was particularly pushed by the tourism sector. And in fact, if you go into a lot of hotels in Jamaica, they have a jerk hut, so there's something that is really being pushed, that just shows you that level of complementarity between the tourism sector and a traditional food product, and how it can just explode and create multiple benefits across the economy. But then jerk is just one potential product. And we have to look across the Caribbean and look at some of our other signature products that maybe we need to take better advantage of and promote or create greater value addition from. Chocolate is the obvious one, right? And there are already various chocolate and cocoa tours, as was mentioned by one of our participants from St. Lucia. But there's also rum, there's curry, there's coffee, there's the various spices, coconut, mango, banana. And I'm sure if we ask persons from each of the countries participating here to speak to what they consider to be some of the emblematic or signature products in their country or in their region, there could be a list of many more. And possibly if we have time, this is something that we could ask people to speak about. But in terms of spices, for example, the ginger, the nutmeg, the pimento, I know in Trinidad you have shadow benny pepper, of course, across the Caribbean. And so it's how we work these value chains for these products and look at the forward and backward linkages, and how can we work with tourism to help to propel some of these products. Because if tourism embraces local foods, right, and agriculture can take advantage of the opportunities, then you can have all of these various benefits and experiences throughout the rural communities and the economy at large. And so thank you. I've come to the end of my presentation, and I hope we have a little bit more time for a few questions and comments. And this is actually a picture that I took at a villa, you know, a tourism villa, and you know, it just shows you how you can create food, how you can amplify food and really make food attractive and enticing. And so I hand over back to Ms. Barbour for any comments/questions.
Thank you so much. There is a question from Marcia, which is basically saying that she's listening while she's listening to you, an idea came to her head because she deals a lot with agro-processing, where she turns fruits into pop. So she's
She
thinking
turns fruits. I didn't get it. She turns fruits into what?
pop.
Pop, as in ice pops.
Well, I'm assuming so.
Okay, fine.
And she's thinking to get into the hotel and make it more presentable. And it's turned into something named Fruit Crush in a
Okay,
small cup. Oh, yes. So she's asking, what do you think?
that sounds like a great idea. That sounds like a great idea. I am actually I have a very urgent call that I need to take. So if you could just give me 1 second, if you don't mind, and I am going to get back to you, if you don't mind.
In the meantime, the poll for the feedback is launched. For those of you who didn't have a chance to vote, if you can do so in the meantime, please. Thank you very much.
Yes, sorry about that. No, I think food pops are excellent. And one of the things that when people are creating products, right? And you want to link to the tourism, one of the things that you have to bear in mind are the various tourism segments, right? Sometimes we don't think about the youth segment, the fact that people are traveling with children, and people will buy anything for their children. Once their children say they want it, they're gonna buy it. And so, you know, how do we market things to children, you know, and something like a fruit pop, you know, they're having something that can, you know, a local fruit that they may have seen somewhere, and it's now in the form of an ice pop, you know. So I think that's a great idea, and it's something that you can market quite well. Miss Barbara, you can continue.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Roxanne had her hand up for the longest while, so, and I know she had asked, her hand was up previously before but didn't get a chance. So Roxanne, I'm gonna give you a chance to speak. So you So I'm assuming, Roxanne, you can hear us? If you're speaking, we're not hearing you. Well, I'm not hearing you. So if it's possible for you to type your question in the chat or use the Q&A box. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to Melissa.
Okay, good Hello, you're hearing me?
We are,
Hello?
hi,
All
we are
right,
here.
right. One of my things, as the lady presenter just mentioned, of children, so you have to incorporate children, and we have to find means of ways to make things attractive for children. I have a 5 years certificate, food handler certificate of a California. I did a course inside of Tortola. We did the local food handler certificate, which me and my daughter did, and then we did there's an international one for the managerial sector because my daughter wanted to do culinary. However, while doing, I noticed one of the trends, and I have noticed, I spoke to a gentleman yesterday where we cut our fruits and leave it in the natural atmosphere like that, the natural atmosphere, when really when fruits are cut, they should be really placed on ice. You could have a slice, and is it something that I think is because while I was doing my training, these are things that I have a different perspective. Before I didn't know anything about it. I just saw it as attractive. It looked pretty, look beautiful. You cut the mangoes, you have them out lying down, they have the other things. But again, the lady was saying food, health, and safety. Even to think of that, a friend of mine recently went to a trip to, I think it's one of those Asian place, and their child got sick. And they said they try not to eat or do anything, I mean, to buy anything or support, but maybe could have just been touched of something. And so therefore, even the food that the fruits that we cut and we hand to our visitors and so forth, they've been out for quite a while. The germs have already passed on. The knife cut from from this food, and it passed on, and someone might be allergic to something. So that is thing to be cognizant of. As I said, it is agriculture's been a part of me because I love agriculture since I was a child, and it's a backbone where my family grew up, where we knew how to do certain things. But again, as I said, if our educational sector is not promoting certain thing attractive again, then if you don't have any experience or you're not exhibiting the young children into these while they're young, then when they grow up, they don't all they want to do is just beat the books to be doctors and lawyers. And bearing in mind, we have recently going to have a product for independence called I think it's Expo, and my daughter's 17 years old. And my daughter bakes very well. Cheesecake, name it, she does it. She started when she was 11. Everything was that every year from since I knew herself, she had to learn something new. And when she was 11, she had to do a 3 months baking course. And since then, she loved to bake. All right. She's going to start to be a lawyer. But the main matter of fact is that she came here to do certain things, and she can't do certain things because people look, oh, she's a child, and they want to pay for it. While she was in Tortola, she would bake a cake, and a cake 130 something US. And here nobody don't want to buy stuff. They don't want to promote. So how can we want to mold the young people when the older folks don't want to promote or to contribute or to buy from these younger children or encourage them or mold them in a way that will actually turn into something that is a livelihood for them in the future. Thank you.
All right, your comment is noted. I don't know if there are any other comments, Miss Barbara. I'm actually unfortunately going to have to leave very shortly. If I don't know if there are any other comments or questions.
The last question that I'm seeing currently is, how can we get the opportunity to visit one of those farm ranches?
That's something would have to be a discussion probably with Helen's daughters, it would be great if we a field trip could be organized, but I know that comes with certain costs. Or if persons have an interest and they want to travel there themselves, then and you're going to be in that particular Caribbean country, and you say, okay, I know that this exists here, I would love to visit. So sometimes it's just knowing where something exists, and if you can actually have that desire yourself to go.
All right, thank you so much. Well, that will be the end of all our questions that I'm seeing currently. So I just want to thank you so much for the engaging session tonight on the introduction of agritourism. for me personally, I really appreciate it. And this is the way that, just the way that you incorporate the video as well, to just give us a little bit more of an understanding and insight. And your presentation was very both informative and inspiring. So thank you so, so, so much for that.
You're most welcome. It's been a pleasure, and the presentation will be shared.
Thank you so much. And the attendees, thank you so much for engaging tonight and just showing up. So thank you so much.